Hello everyone, welcome to your Friday edition of Eye on Africa. Here are the headlines. Kenya's High Court refuses to abolish a law that criminalizes homosexuality. Gay rights organizations had filed a petition to repeal the colonial-era law, which makes gay sex punishable by up to 14 years in jail. South African President Jacob Zuma is back in court as he faces accusations of corruption, and a potentially crucial witness he had claimed was dead has been found alive in Europe. And as the Cannes Film Festival comes to an end, we take a closer look at African representation on the French Riviera these past 10 days. We begin in Kenya, where the country's High Court has refused to repeal laws that criminalize homosexuality. The court argued the laws were not unconstitutional, dismissing a petition which had been filed by gay rights organizations. The move has been criticized by the UN, saying it's a major step backwards for equality. Gay sex is punishable by up to 14 years in jail in Kenya. For more on the story, let's bring in France 24's Carolyn Thompson, who joins us live from Nairobi. Carolyn, why exactly did the High Court refuse to abolish this law?
Well, the petitioners who brought this law, court case forward, what they were asking for was that the judges consider that these laws are essentially unconstitutional. So Kenya has a new constitution that protects human rights, things like dignity and security and privacy. And they were arguing that these laws go against that and that also it creates discrimination. Now, the judges said that they just did not provide enough evidence to make them believe that that was the case. And so they could not repeal the acts on that basis. The other thing that the judges said is that in Kenya's constitution, the definition of marriage is between a man and a woman, and that was very intentional when the Constitution was created. And they said that they had concerns that were they to repeal these acts, it would open the doors for further debate and for further discussion that could eventually move toward asking for allowing gay marriage, which is something that then would be considered constitutional. And that was one of the reasons that they said was unacceptable. They could not, for that reason, repeal the act.
Obviously, this was a major disappointment for gay rights organizations. Some of those groups actually were the ones who filed that petition. How have they reacted?
Yes, so earlier in the day, there were crowds of people very excited and hopeful. And as the judgment was read, people got much more discouraged and some left without wanting to speak about what had happened. So after it was read, a group of activists who represent the LGBTQ community in Kenya, they spoke to media. They read a statement. They did not grant interviews. Here's what they said.
Justifies the stigma, discrimination, and the violence meted against Kenyans who identify or are perceived to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, gender non-binary, or queer.
Now, this may have come as a surprise for some people, but for many, it was just a reminder that although Kenya may seem progressive in a lot of ways, a lot of the legislation is not in the same situation. And in fact, public opinion around this issue really did not seem to be in favor of these activists. And as the judges pointed out, even the Constitution has enshrined in it that the definition of marriage is between a man and a woman. And so it was just another reminder for these activists of how far they're going to have to fight in order to achieve what they're seeking.
All right, France 24's Carolyn Thompson in Nairobi. Carolyn, thank you very much. Well, homosexuality in Africa is certainly a contentious and divisive issue. About half of the countries on the continent have laws which criminalize gay sex, and in a handful of those countries it is even punishable by death. Mo Julien has more.
Kenya's president said last year that gay rights were not a matter of concern to ordinary people, and that 99% of Kenyans were in favor of laws criminalizing homosexuality. There are no statistics on this, but at first glance, legislation across the continent could appear to support his claim. Only 21 out of 49 African countries have decriminalized same-sex relations. In Mauritania, Sudan, northern Nigeria, and southern Somalia, homosexual acts are punishable by death. though there have been no executions in recent years. Religious authorities, both Muslim and Christian, exert influence on communities, and many, like this Kenyan bishop, are vocal opponents of same-sex unions.
The country has been defended by this ruling. There is a voice of God that is speaking now to say that we have listened to the voice of God. And that voice of God is enshrined in our constitution, the preamble, that we people of Kenya, the sovereignty of this country, we are a people made by God. And therefore, no human law can abrogate what God has ordained.
Yet more and more activists are emerging in many African countries to demand equal rights. They risk social exclusion and even attacks, but some of them have obtained change. In Mozambique, Angola, and Seychelles, homosexuality is no longer a crime. In South Africa, same-sex marriage is legal. But today's disappointment isn't the first. In recent years, Chad, Uganda, and Nigeria have introduced new legislation or toughened existing laws.
South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma has said he was forced to sell his socks to pay legal fees in a high-profile corruption case. Zuma is accused of taking bribes from French defense company Thales in the 1990s. Both parties deny the charges. And in a surprising turn of events, a former Thales employee who Zuma and his defense team had said was dead was tracked down and found alive in Europe. France 24's Aisha Ismail joins us live from Cape Town. Aisha, a pretty shocking discovery, and this man could prove to be a crucial witness against Zuma and his former employer.
Well, Alain Tetart is certainly a crucial witness in the Jacob Zuma fraud and corruption trial. He is the former head of the French arms company Thales South Africa, and according to South African prosecutors, is the author of a cryptic fax which details payments made to Jacob Zuma. These were annual payments made to the former South African president. And these payments are believed to have been bribes to stop any investigations into Thales, and also to allow the company to score more contracts with people politically connected to Jacob Zuma. Now, the prosecutors are saying that they have been able to trace the Alain Tetart to Europe, and that he is alive. And this, of course, now paves the way for him to be brought to South Africa to testify against Thales and Jacob Zuma. But of course, Jacob Zuma is not on trial alone. He is being charged alongside Thales, but both parties have applied for a permanent stay of prosecution. They say, well, they believe that they will not be given a fair trial. They also saying that there have been lengthy delays in bringing this matter to court, and also the fact that they're saying that several of the witnesses are not traceable. And according to Jacob Zuma's affidavit, he states in his affidavit that Alain Tetart is dead. But of course, the National Prosecuting Authority has now confirmed that they have traced him and that he is alive and that he's living in Europe.
All right, a fascinating development out of South Africa. France 24's Aisha Ismail, thank you so much. Finally, the 72nd annual Cannes Film Festival wraps up on Saturday. Over the past 10 days, several dozens of features have been shown on the French Riviera, with this year being particularly prolific for African movies. All eyes, of course, are on French-Senegalese director Mati Diop. Her movie Atlantique has been nominated for the legendary Palme d'Or. As the festival draws to a close, Claire Diao, a journalist for the Pan-African Film magazine, has this from Cannes.
It was a great year. We had African films in every selection, in every section of the Cannes Film Festival, with Mati Diop in the main competition with Atlantique, co-production between France and Senegal. We had two African films in the Un Certain Regard section, Adam by Mariam Touzani from Morocco, a first feature, and Papisha by Mounia Medour from Algeria, a first feature as well. So a great representation of women. We had women also, an actress from Burkina Faso in the main jury, Maimouna Ndiaye. And then in the Critics Week, we had two feature films and two first features, one from Morocco, The Unknown Scent by Ala Eddin Aljem. And we had one first feature from Algeria, Abu Leila by Amin Sidi Boumidine. Also a short film from Egypt, Fakh. And then in the director's fortnight, there was one second feature from Tunisia, Tlames by Ala Eddin Slim. So we are really happy to see that there is a new generation of African filmmakers coming to Cannes and fighting to get awards and international recognition. I really appreciated Mati Diop's Atlantic, and I will be really honored that an African film receive an award, because we didn't get any Palme d'Or since 1975. It was Mohamed Lagdar Amina, an Algerian feature called Chronicle of the Years of Fire. But when I discuss with all my colleagues, it seems that Pedro Almodovar or Bong Joon-ho or maybe Elias Suleiman or Marco Bellocchio could have more success than Mati Diop. So let's wait and see. There are many women in the official jury, so maybe the Senegalese movie will get an award.
That does it for this edition of Eye on Africa. Stay tuned to France 24. There's more news right after the break.